Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, the General Secretary of the TUC will deliver a petition today signed by 200,000 people in opposition to the government's trade union bill. It's a bill that's been debated in the Lords this afternoon, where it's facing considerable opposition. It's among a number of controversial measures the government's taking to change the way politics in Britain is done. Jo Coe, as always, is across the details.
Well, it's a rough old game, politics, Andrew, and the government is changing the rules. One big reform is the way unions fund the Labour Party. At the moment, union members are given the option to opt out of paying into their political fund. The government believes this is unfair and instead argues union members should actively opt in. What's more, George Osborne has also announced short money, which is given to all political parties to allow them to carry out their parliamentary work. That would be reduced by 19%. Labour are crying foul and claim the moves could cost them up to £8 million a year. It's not only Labour who are taking a mauling. The charity sector is angry over proposals which would mean charities would no longer be able to spend central government grants on lobbying Parliament. The government argues taxpayers' money should only be spent on helping people. However, the National Council for Voluntary Organisations call it an insane policy. It's not just about money. The government has reformed voter registration. Now everyone must register individually instead of by household. And Labour argue that the changes are happening too quickly and many people will slip through the cracks. Andrew.
Thanks, Jo Coe. Nick, many people have often thought that two big weaknesses of our party funding system is Labour's overdependence on the unions and your overdependence on rich hedge fund people and private equity and Russian oligarchs. Why have you only decided to deal with the union side and not with your own way of funding?
Well, each of those issues are right in their own right. It's important that you don't just have your money taken from your salary to pay into a party coffers, that you have to actively opt in. If you try to say you have to opt out of an insurance policy when you buy a television set, there'd be uproar. And the same principle applies to joining a trade union. The levy, you should have to opt in to pay the levy, not have to actively opt out to pay.
But it's been the policy of every previous Conservative government since the 1920s to allow an opt-out rather than an opt-in. What changed?
Well, it's wrong in principle, and we're doing what is
right.
right.
So every government, so the Winston Churchill government, the Macmillan government, even the Thatcher government, were wrong in principle to allow an opt-in rather than an opt-out rather than an opt-in.
Well, in those past governments you mentioned, the closed shop was lawful. And you know, I've always thought
Thatcher abolished the closed shop, but she did not abolish the opt-out procedure.
And she should have done, as Winston Churchill should have got rid of the closed shop.
Well, supposing you're right, and we'll come back and get your reaction to that in a minute, but supposing you were right, why would you also not deal with the fact that unregulated hedge fund managers, unregulated private equity, people who may not even reside here very much, like Russian oligarchs or whatever, can donate unlimited sums of money to the Conservatives? Unlimited.
They can also give unlimited sums to other political parties, the Liberal Party, the Labour Party.
Why would it be?
And they do.
But why should there not be a limit on
there is
donations?
a limit. There is a limit on it. If you anything over £5,000 has to be declared.
Right.
In a free society, you have to allow people to use their money to make their political case. So long as it's transparent and so long as it's declared. We tried to have all party discussions in the last Parliament to try to resolve this party funding overall, and it collapsed. And the alternative, of course, is to have taxpayer-funded party, and that's not something that the public wants.
Most trade union members do not vote Labour. The majority don't. So why shouldn't there be the principle that if you join a trade union, you are then asked, do you also want to contribute to the Labour Party? And if you do, you tick a box, rather than it being automatically taken without you getting the chance.
It's contributing to the trade union's political fund, which they would then use to make donations to the Labour Party, but also to campaign on a range of issues. We had the Collins Review, named after our previous General Secretary, Ray Collins, that was looking at issues like that, and we were looking at moving perhaps to some reforms of the way the party is funded by the unions. The problem with what the government is doing now, as you said in your opening question to Nick, is it's entirely one-sided. This is an attack on the trade unions' relationship with Labour. We're also seeing an attack on the way that charities are engaged in political campaigning.
I take the point that it's one-sided, which is the question I put to Mr. Gibb. But what I'm asking you about the principle, even if it's one-sided, it doesn't necessarily make it wrong. They could be wrong that they're not trying to clean up both sides. That was the implication behind my question. But what is wrong with the principle, given that most trade union members are not Labour voters, that if they want their fees, a chunk of their fees to go to the Labour Party, that should be an explicit act rather than something that just happens?
Well, as I said, with the Collins Review, we were looking at perhaps bringing that in over a number of years.
So you kind of concede the principle?
In principle, I think that's something that we are ready to look at. But what this government is doing with the bill now is it would be, I think, a 3-month period after the legislation comes in.
Which is not very long.
Which is not very long in terms of, it's a huge logistical effort. There's also issues about not allowing electronic ballots and not allowing this to be done online. So just the sheer cost to the trade unions of having to operate this.
But let me just put this too. We've just seen Bernie Sanders win an amazing victory in New Hampshire, won by 2-1 over Hillary Clinton, and she runs the most formidable political machine in America. And there's a lot of Wall Street money in the Clinton machine, and some union money as well. Mr. Saunders managed to get over 3 million individual donations, $20 million in January alone. Not big money. Most of it, I had them last night at about 2:30 in the morning. Most of the donations under $100.
Yeah.
Why can't Labour and Conservative do that in this country?
Well, I think that's something that Labour wanted to move towards. And
there's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, well, we've now got, I think, more than 370,000 members, which is nearly
of them are
double
only given
what they were at the
£3.
general election. Well, it was £3 to join, but that doesn't mean to say they're not then making donations.
But you don't get that kind of individual money.
I think we do want to move away from the big donations dominating politics, but it's far more an issue. The Conservatives had their black and white ball the other night, where you had people paying huge amounts of money.
Well, actually, this year it wasn't compared to previous years. It wasn't so much, but I take your point.
You do have people that, as you say, sometimes don't even have much of a connection with politics in the UK, paying a lot of money, and we're not able to do that in the Labour Party. We're funded by ordinary people, whether it's through the trade unions or through our membership. Let
me just put this final point to you, Mr. Gibb. We've got this, what many people regarded as they're not necessarily against what you're doing with the unions, but they see it as kind of one-sided. You're hitting Labour's sources rather than doing anything about your own. You're now putting tougher rules in for charities at what they can do with government money. You're changing voter registration. That may be right or wrong, but it certainly is more of a help to you than it is to Labour. You add it all up, kind of looks like the arrogance of power.
No, each of those issues is right in its own right. We had the problems in Tower Hamlets with voter fraud. The election court was very, condemning the use of sort of ghost voters. We're tackling ghost voters.
But all these changes are to your advantage.
No, what we want is an electoral register that has integrity. And they've had this system in Northern Ireland since 2002, and it's worked perfectly well. In terms of charities lobbying, when people give money to charity or charities use public money that we pay to provide services, we don't expect that money then to be used for political lobbying.
But charities aren't there just to provide services. They're there to, if they feel that the law is penalising the people that they're there to help.
And also
I think it's entirely right for them to lobby on those issues.
Publicity on particular issues.
Exactly.
Anyway,
and the government, I think the attack on charities in some ways is even more important than what they're doing on the trade union front.
We want that money spent on vulnerable people and the services they're meant to be providing.
We'll need to come back because we're up against PMQs.
I've been getting away with it